Did you know Kelley Blue Book's Instant Cash Offer helps you attract customers who are motivated to trade in or sell their vehicles? Plus, it helps you to say yes to more customers without taking on cars you can't move. Learn more about Instant Cash Offer by contacting your Kelley Blue Book representative today. All right, let's move on to the show. Here we go. Welcome to the Dealer Playbook Podcast. My name is Michael Cirillo, and each week I sit down with the brightest minds in marketing, sales, and leadership to help you level up your career in automotive. Thank you so much for spending your time here with me today. Now let's open up the playbook. Here we go. All right, here we go. Sitting down now with the man, Dwayne Marino. Thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook Podcast.
Michael, I'm excited to be here. Thanks very much for having me as your guest.
Absolutely. And you know what? Anytime I get the fellow Canadians on the show, man, I mean, giddy up. It's Canada pride.
That's right. You got to stand up for yourself, stick together.
That's right. And you know what's exciting about that is there's so many people that are making a stand. There's so much good Canadian content there, and it's fun to see, you know, what traditionally Canada's kind of been that sleepy, quiet neighbor upstairs. You know, starting to see some real power players coming out of the country and really dominating. So it's exciting to see. Dwayne, I want to turn this over to you before we dive into the subject matter. Just tell us, the audience, a little bit about yourself and your company and what you do, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. Thank you. To keep it very short, you can read my bio online. It's my full bio is online, who I've worked for, all kinds of stuff. But in essence, I started in the car business when I was 16 years of age, changing oil. I've never left it. I would never have thought that, a few decades later, it would turn into me the career that it's been. I've got 3 books on Amazon. We've got a massive online training portal called Marino TV. We've got a full-time training academy in Toronto, been there for almost 2 decades. We go in dealership, we do regional seminars, I've got trainers, and one of my claim to fame I'm very proud of is I'm the only trainer to ever have worked with Joe Girard, who's the #1 car salesperson in history, according to the Guinness Book of World Records. So I've got a pretty diverse background, and psychology has been my major area of study ever since I've left university. As far as education goes, I still take training and I still sell. So my sales license is still good here in Ontario. I've never stopped selling. I've been in the car business, like I said, since I was 16. So I've really seen things change dramatically over the last couple of decades, especially the last 5 years, I think primarily due to legislation and competition and mostly technology, customer smartphones. So that's going to kind of tie in with today's topic quite a bit.
Yeah, I love this because the first thing coming to my mind is, you've really seen, with your breadth of experience, your history, you've really seen how things have evolved or haven't evolved and where they need to be evolving. And so I want to kind of kick this off. When we were kind of talking about topics, this one was really interesting to me because it's something that we hear talked about all the time, right? There's all these Facebook groups and all of these forums, and people are saying, what do we need to be focusing on? Ultimately, at some point or another, the topic of how to decrease transaction times comes into the mix. So from your vantage point, why do we want to do this? Why is it important as we look to the future? And then I want to talk about some of the hows, like how do we get into that? So I want to turn that over to you. Why do we need to dramatically decrease transaction times?
Okay. This has been a focus of study and of training and of expertise and mastery for me for the last 3 to 5 years. So we've got a whole process built around this called flow. The major metrics behind that, there's a couple of them. If we look at profitability, obviously things are very competitive now. A lot of dealerships are using live market pricing, not just with used vehicles, but also with pre-owned. I just worked at a dealership for 2 weeks. I did everything from washing cars to the parts counter, service counter, selling cars, working the sales desk and doing F&I. And they had a promotion along with some manufacturer incentives of a 35% off their pickup trucks, what it amounted to. Next thing you know, another dealer figures that out and they do 36%. So customers have access to all this information. A lot of people now, Google started in 1996, became the dominant search engine in 1999. I'm training people to sell cars, and I'm selling cars to individuals that have no concept of what life was like BG before Google. And if you actually study the psychology and even the brain mapping, brain plasticity and neuroplasticity, people, due to smartphones and technology, actually don't think the same way they think or thought 5 or 10 years ago. And if you go into a dealership and you look at their sales process, their teaching, and what a lot of other companies are still professing, it's a sales process that was designed in the 40s. Meet and greet, counsel qualify, selection, presentation, trial, close, F&I. Weave through that, stay off price, slow them down. And it's almost laughable when you're selling to a millennial and they're being brought through that, or trying to train a millennial salesperson on that. Their brains don't work that way. So what I'll point to is a couple things. There's a bit of a sweet spot now, I would say around 50 minutes, where if you actually track the deals and the transactions in the showroom that are happening under an hour, if we have an average transaction time under an hour, and I'm still okay with salespeople taking 2 or 3 hours or 2 or 3 months to sell a car, because not everybody's ready to buy a car when they come in, but a lot of people are.
Right.
And some people literally you'll close in 15 or 20 minutes. But the only transactions where I was going with that 35% and then 36% off thing, besides all the information the client has, the transactions on average where the dealerships are making money on the front end and back end, the most money, are transactions that happen shorter on the front end, because the customer comes in pretty much transaction ready. We don't get in their way. We don't skip steps or speed things up, but you move right towards the close. There's obviously not a lot of time for objections. They obviously don't have a lot of questions. They're happy with whatever transaction price they saw online, maybe a little bit of an incentive, whatever that's going to be. And also for the F&I manager, who's going to deal with that customer generally after the person in the showroom, ask any business manager, would you rather be talking to a customer that spent 2, 3, 4 hours buying a car? Or would you rather have a customer in front of you now that's only been taking half an hour to an hour buying a car? So all the metrics from profitability, customer satisfaction, closing ratios, and F&I improve when transaction times drop. And I really encourage my clients to just start paying attention to that, because a lot of dealerships really are not cognizant and are not tracking transaction times. And it's one of the 2 most important metrics when I work with a client now that we pay attention to, that when we make a change in it, everything improves, including employee retention. I mean, a salesperson would much rather learn how to sell a car in 45 minutes versus 2 or 3, 4 hours. That's how salespeople are built. And right now, with the way customers are, most of us in every business we go to equate customer experience and, a great experience any place. And when you say, what was so great about it? You say, they're so fast. It was so quick. It was so easy.
Right.
That's pretty much, if you think about any store we go to or go back into, and you say, oh, it's a great restaurant. Why? Because they're on it. They're on point. It's quick. So we've got to kind of start mirroring whatever his expectations are.
I love this because, what you just said is there's kind of this spill off effect, right? You decrease transaction times, but I love what you're saying about, but we're also seeing increased employee retention. We're seeing
big time,
and that helps with morale and culture and all of these different things.
Right.
And so I think that's a really fascinating thing. So, I know there were those who were like, dude, why is Cirillo asking why we should this is a no-brainer. But as you've pointed out, holy smokes, there's a lot more to the why of decreasing a transaction time than just the face value, because we all want things quickly.
Well, and I'm talking from experience. Like I said, we've been down this road now 3 to 5 years. I've got a dealer group in particular that's been with us now for about 3 years, and the mandate has been, increasing flow. And they're in a situation right now, which actually you can find the testimonial on YouTube if you wanted to see it. Their average new hire. Well, Michael, let me ask you this: if you have an experience with this from either being in the business or past participants, sure. What does an average new salesperson sell per month in, let's say, the first year, 6 months? Do you know what they would deliver per month?
Probably between 6 and 8.
Yeah, exactly right. And right out of my dealer principal's mouth, you'll see this on the YouTube testimony. You can find it. That's what they were always doing. And that was with training. That was with regular training. When they started, mind you, it was training that I don't think works anymore, slowing down a customer, staying off price, management not being involved in the deal.
Yeah.
But his average new hire in his group, the average new hire is doing between 20 to 30 cars a month. After 6 months, 15 to 20 cars in the first 3 months, and a consistent, let's call it 25 cars a month after a few months, and they're staying there. those salespeople are not going anywhere. They're making money that it used to take somebody 10 or 15 years to make in this business.
Sure.
So somebody that comes in with no experience, with great management support and a good training program, it's a whole new world. It's a whole new world for these salespeople and customers.
So, okay. So let me ask you this. Because this is so compelling, a no-brainer. I mean, if I have a store, I'm installing this type of a fast transaction process.
Yeah.
What gets in the way? So somebody adopts the flow, the training, they want to do it, the intentions are good. What are some of the potential barriers that get in the way from them experiencing these types of results? Okay.
In my opinion, number one is management that doesn't want to retool their own psychology, their own thinking, and their own processes. They're very well intended. They're smart individuals. They're hardworking. Those men and women out there in management, if you're listening, you want nothing more than your dealership to succeed for a lot of different reasons. And you come from a culture that maybe, our sales process 5 or 10 years ago, you did fairly well on the floor. And you're going to sell some cars anyways, being a franchise car dealership, no matter what you do. So you're kind of given this illusion that things are going well. But if you've been trained on a long sales process, and again, those mantras, stay off price, slow them down. And if you're afraid to touch a customer a few times during a sale, which is a big part of this, as we'll get into it, I would say management, uninvolved management, and management that doesn't want to retrain or retool is the number one obstacle. That would be number one.
Okay, and how do you get people? I mean, we're into 100 and some odd episodes of the show now, and when I ask these types of questions, now yourself included, adding your voice to the mix, it always comes down to this thing: you've got to change. Like,
if you're done changing, if you know what my mantra there is, if you're done changing, you're done.
Yeah.
If you're done changing, you're done. Absolutely.
Why do people fear change, do you think?
We like certainty, and there's fear of what you don't know. Things are kind of working the way it is. Why bother? There could be laziness. Some people are just so habitual that they can't seem to break out of those habits. And a lot of people have a scotoma. They've got a blind spot for the 2 or 3 or 4 pieces in their business that aren't really working the way it should, because all they know is their business. But if you went into somebody else's company, you'd see it right away. So that's really a human psychology. I don't think it's ever going to change, but it doesn't trap everybody. There's a lot of people, I hope not myself. I love change. I just don't want to do change for the sake of change. I'm not about what's new, I'm about what's works. There's a lot of things that I teach that have been around the business, every business, for decades, because it still works. But there's a lot of things that no longer work the way that they should.
Right. Love it. Yeah. And then before I so rudely cut you off with that question, you were moving on to number 2.
Yeah.
So your first reason was, management just kind of not willing to change. Like you said, I love, you're the only other guest on the show that's, or other person on the show other than myself that's used the word scotoma. So like maybe that's a Canadian thing using that term. I don't know. But so fear of change, not willing to change, and then just kind of those blind spots to, where they could possibly improve the business. And I mean, what else would you say? What are, for those listening in, what's going to get in the way from them being able to accomplish this?
Okay. Now, before I go any further, it's not a commercial as much as it seems like. I've got a book on Amazon called Unstoppable Selling, okay, along with my little Unstoppable Money, but it talks about this in detail here, so I can only explain it so much right here. And I've mentioned this a couple times. Mantras are things that kind of become a looping thought process, and things that we just say automatically. And the ones that I've used so far, which are really the pillars of the business, when you look at besides the process that we do, is stay off price. We have 4 options when a customer comes in. When we talk about price, we can ask them what they want to pay. That's going to cause a big problem. We can show them how much it is. That's going to be a big problem. We can stay off and avoid it. That's a big problem very much. Or we can give a realistic range and get a reaction. So if we've been trained to constantly stay off price, change the topic, I have a couple of problems with that. That doesn't fit with customer psychology today, because if there's nothing else they've seen when they went online, it was the price of a vehicle someplace.
Right.
And the other thing, I'm talking to a sales professional now in a showroom who won't or can't answer my question. When you ask, what's the approximate payments or price in the vehicle? That is probably, staying off price is probably not how you would want to be sold if you went to go buy something, and is probably not how you would sell your best friend or relative. You would actually answer that question in an intelligent way and move on. So if you're not comfortable doing it to yourself or to your closest friend, that tells me something about the process you're about to use on your client. So that's the second one, staying off price. I've got a whole system on how we address that extremely early and get that elephant out of the room to make sure we're selling a customer the right car. And so that we answer that question to get it out of the way, because that's going to be a big thing to psychologically slow down the sale if they're not sure what your number is or if they don't have some idea. Right. And the second one is this, another mantra, slow down the sale. So when I say to a sales rep in training, hey, slow it down, what I mean is slow down your thought processes, slow down your mind, but don't actually create a situation where you are slowing down the client, leaving them sitting there by themselves, unattended, no matter what you're doing, getting a price, going to get keys, slowing down things. We could talk about that forever. If we look at the average page load time now a person will tolerate for a website, it's under 5 seconds. I try to spot what grocery line is moving quicker every time I go to the groceries, even at a stoplight. We look for ways to speed things up, and they go in a dealership, and in a lot of cases, it's like the land that time forgot. Like it takes, there's other reasons behind that I'll get to, but it's torturous for a person now apparently that has, about a 4-second attention span versus a goldfish, which has one close to 7 or 8 seconds. They just can't stay with you. And then I'm going on a rant here. I'll try to stop because I get super excited by this. When somebody is disengaged, when you're becoming irrelevant or you're boring to them, the first thing they do is they pick up their smartphones. You'll see it in showrooms all the time, customers on their smartphone. If there's one signal that sales reps out there have to understand, a signal that you're losing the sale or probably are about to lose it completely is when a customer hops on their smartphone. Nothing good happens when a customer goes on their phone. You've either lost credibility or connection. Something's happened. So a part of our process here is to create such high level of engagements and true value for the client during the process and the conversation that part of the way we reduce transactions is keep them, they just don't go on their phone. As crazy as that sounds.
We're talking to Dwayne Marino here on the Dealer Playbook. We've already been digging deep. We're going to hear a quick word from our sponsor and then jump back in.
We started using the KBB Instant Cash Offer day one. It delivers a better customer experience and customer engagement. I can log into the Instant Cash Offer tool and see cars that customers have appraised where I can buy their car from them, or we trade them into a newer pre-owned vehicle. It's easier to get to that yes moment because it just streamlines and expedites the whole process. The Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer is a complete win-win for both parties, the dealer and the customer. And it's an essential part of doing business in today's world.
Okay, so I really love the direction that this conversation is going because it's so needed, especially as, you see all these debates happening online. People are worried, dealers are worried about the evolution of technology and what the Elon Musks are going to do to this business and, what Amazon's going to do testing out car sales online and yada, yada, yada. I'm actually a believer that technology will facilitate a different style of transaction, but people are going to still need information. They're going to still want to talk to somebody when they're making big investments. And I know there's those that just cringed right now when they heard me refer to a car deal as an investment. But when you really get in the customer's shoes, I mean, when you're spending over $5,000 on something, you think of it as an investment. This is hard-earned dollars. I'm financing it. It's giving me a service back in return. So the question is, how do we align with the customer expectation? Because I think that's really what this is all about. Like you said, I'm looking for the closest spot to the green light. I'm looking for the shortest line in the grocery store. And then I love what you said about, and then I walk into a dealership and it's where time, it's like the land before time, where time was lost. Yeah. How do we get started? What do we do? How do we just start implementing faster transaction times within the store? And also the other side of that is there any way that a OEM or anything like that will get in the way of this?
Great questions. I'm going to give you 15 suggestions to my dealer friends out there and for you, Michael, on how to help at least understand the psychology of this without giving away my entire secret sauce that you have to find out from my training or from my books, of course. I want to just backtrack to what you said about dealers and so on fearing change. I work for an automotive manufacturer at the corporate level. I've done lots of things. I've done everything in the car business as far as I can tell, besides actually building cars and owning a new car dealership. I've done everything pretty much in between, and I've never left the business. I spent 7 years at an automotive manufacturer that ended up declaring bankruptcy a few years ago. And I heard how they were talking, and I left about 10 years before that happened, but the writing was on the wall because they did not want to change. And it could have been prevented. Believe me, they didn't want to change. So sometimes, the trend is not your friend unless you recognize what the trend is and then decide to make some changes before you have to, it's either evolve or dissolve. So you can choose to evolve or dissolve. I hope to evolve. I hope most of my clients do. So nobody's too big to fail. And again, being Canadians, Michael, BlackBerry started the smartphone industry. They didn't pay attention to the trends, apps and the connectivity of the internet and things that way. And look what happened to them. You see, like really, and a great company, but just maybe they made enough money. I don't know what happened. They got too fat, too lazy. So nobody's too big to fail. And how we keep the Elon Musks and the people, I guess, not having a massive competitive advantage out there with our customers or in the marketplace is staying cutting edge, making the trend our friend, and then they won't have an opportunity. There will be no wedge point for them to jump in and take over a fantastic business that we all want to be part of. If it does happen, we'll all adapt, whatever does happen. But part of it is, we don't want to be our own undoing. So I look at those two examples, and
it reminds me of, I want to say it was Brian Tracy, maybe it wasn't, but he basically said, if you want the things in your life to change, you need to change the things in your life.
Very well said.
And so it all comes down to this concept of change. And I love what you're saying. It just reminds me of this comedian I watch every now and again, Chris D'Elia. He's like, don't like the way things are going? Then change. Like, it's just this simple, like, oh yeah, the answer is to change. Yeah, we're afraid of it, but I feel like that is kind of the crux of how all of this works. You said, stay cutting edge, be cutting edge. Yep. I know there's somebody going, oh man, that sounds like work. Can't I just invest in some new tech startup that promises to lasso the sun, the moon, and the stars for me? No, you can't.
And part of the problem with the change too, let's face it, dealer principals, I think it's no secret here, are either millionaires, multimillionaires. Some of the dealer groups are, in the US anyways, they're billionaires. Getting somebody who's made a few $1 million to change, they're like, no, I'm hugely successful. I don't want to, why fix it if it isn't broken? And because they're not grassroots anymore, in a lot of cases are not, they lose touch with what's actually happening at that level until suddenly it's too late. So sometimes a super successful as they can be, that's one of the hindrances to change because the fear is there. They don't want to lose what they've built.
Yeah. I can't get into that headspace. It's bizarre to me because I'm constantly, I'm constantly looking how I can climb and how I can get to the next level. But I mean, in that regard, in that context, it kind of puts these multi-million-dollar dealer, DPs, GMs, or owners in the same boat as BlackBerry.
Completely.
Right.
Yeah.
And make the trend
Absolutely.
your friend. I love that. I've written that down. Okay. So there's these 15 bullet points you're talking about. I'm going to turn it over to you and we're going to fly through these. And obviously we all know that we're going to be linking to your stuff in the show notes so people can get more information. But let's dive in. Let's go deep on these 15 bullet points.
Okay. And if you want me to stop or expound on them, let me know. I'll go fairly quickly.
Sounds great.
And these are general themes. Some are more specific than others. So the first one, I've got a little list sitting right here because I don't want to forget them. I prepared this out of a 3-day workshop we do.
Sure.
Is salespeople and managers have got to know their inventory. They've got to know their programs and their website like the back of their hand. I see a lot of transactions stalled or messed up or stopped because a salesperson simply doesn't know those. So if we count how many minutes are lost in a transaction by that, it's a lot of time. Never mind the lost sales. We definitely slow down the sale because we just don't know our inventory programs and website.
Makes sense.
Logistically, dealer plates, finding keys to cars, getting gas chits, finding the car physically in inventory. That's got to be really analyzed. How long it takes you to gather customer information for a test drive, anything like that. And any administration that you can move to after the transaction to get out of the way during the transaction, we have to address all of that. Because logistics, again, we're talking minutes to hours in some cases per day lost there because of those things. Next one is
the transparency in there. Sorry to cut you off. The transparency, because I mean, I've been there, right? You're sitting in the lounge and you're going, what the freak is going on here? Nobody checks in with you. Nobody tells you, I'm going to go find the keys so that I can, like, you're you're sitting here going, holy crap, I don't know what's happening. So I love that. It's just so common sense.
Yeah, it is common sense. It's like going to a restaurant and they can't find a spoon for your soup. You'd be looking around going, what? Anybody seen a spoon? It's like a dealer can't find their cars, can't find the keys, can't find a dealer plate, can't find a gas chip. The customer's going, what if you've lost all your credibility. The customer's already looking at you like you're a gong show. Yeah.
Do I
You've created so many objections.
Yeah. Don't worry, I brought my own keys.
Right? So, I mean, I know stuff happens. It's busy. If you're selling a lot of cars, sometimes stuff does get misplaced. So I'm talking about overall themes. Nobody's perfect, but overall themes. Right?
Okay.
Next point, train. You know, if you look at an operating room can't have flow. It can't have things moving quickly unless everybody knows what's going on. So salespeople and managers, you can't train too much, but please make sure you're training what works today by people that do it today. Don't train what used to work from people that used to do it, because you might be mastering something that no longer works, which is more dangerous to you than actually maybe not training at all, because now you're learning habits, and we know habits are hard to change. We just talked about that. So train. That's going to give you more flow, as I call it. It's going to reduce your transaction time because you know what you're doing. You're competent.
I love what you're saying here, because it's something I believe so deeply in. There's so many people, especially in this digital age with social media, that are willing to give you of all of their advice, but they're a bunch of posers. And they're a bunch of people who, you know, sorry, but social media gave a microphone to a bunch of morons. And they see it and they pick it up and they give you your advice. But I love what you're saying, which is something I believe in so deeply, which I you know, has worked wonders in my own personal development, is that you need to get your advice from somebody who has achieved what you are, you know, aiming for by doing the things that they're teaching you. Like, hey, do you do that? Oh no, well, I wouldn't do that. It never worked for me. But like, well, then why are you telling me what to do? So I love what you're saying, right? The relevancy of who is giving you the advice or where you're getting your information from. There's so many, and this isn't meant to sound negative, but there's so many Grant Cardone parrots out there. Who were probably selling 6 to 8 cars a month. Maybe they sold 30 cars like once in their career, and the next thing you know, they're a trainer. And they're just parroting the things that he said, and they don't actually know for a certainty whether or not it works.
There's another American trainer. What's his name? Jay, starts with a J. Anyways, I don't want to get into that. But it's not just did they do it? Do they do it now? I know Grant. I know, the other gentleman I'm trying to place his name. You have to be, because we're talking about change. Things change so rapidly. I'm telling you, what worked for it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they got to be in the trenches occasionally to see what's going on. So to me, Joe Girard talks about ATNAs, all talk and no action, but it's all talk and no action today because things change so much. He doesn't do automotive car sales seminars anymore because he knows it's changed so much since he sold in the 60s or 70s. So got to stay current. And the only way to current is he's old. Brilliant, very driven, a little crazy, because he's so driven. But the business has changed so much since his time. His psychology is great, but a lot of his processes today, unfortunately, wouldn't work. But he would adapt. I would tell you, if he's selling cars today, even him at his age, he would adapt.
Sure. Yeah. All right.
Okay, so know your inventory, programs, and website. You can't train too much. Next one is use your mobile business device, your smartphone, during the sale with a customer. There's so many things that you're leaving the customer alone for. You're going to your computer that you could do on your phone. And your phone's got more credibility than your computer or your manager, because a customer can often replicate what you're doing there. So bring your smartphone into the process for data collection, taking pictures of stock numbers on vehicles so you don't forget stock numbers, looking at your inventory, understanding your product knowledge questions you get off your phone, history of your used cars, the price of the used car right now, because that changes every single day. And we don't want to mismatch what the customer's researched online. So at least if we're looking at the same data they are, then we can talk about, maybe that data is not current or correct. But if you're way out to lunch based on what they just saw on their smartphone at the stoplight or at the McDonald's or at their house before they left, you're done again. You've lost more transaction time because it's your credibility that's causing things to slow down. You don't have the rapport. You're losing connection because they don't believe you.
Yeah, makes sense.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Next one is keep your engagement levels extremely high. Stay with your client. Don't leave them alone. The more relevant, the better you are at doing all of that. If the engagement levels are high, they stay with you. What do we say? Time flies when you're having fun. Make your sales process fun, because a lot of it is a perception. If you're boring, if you don't have a sense of humor, if you don't know how to mirror people, what took 10 minutes might feel like 45.
Totally.
So that's all personal relationship skills and so on that salespeople have to keep working on. Next one, authority intervention. Yeah, authority intervention. The more times a manager touches them, just to, hey, good morning, folks, how's it going? How are we making out? Oh, you're in good hands. How was the drive? Thanks for coming in. Oh, I'm just going to go outside and look at your trade. We're just going to prepare the numbers. And at the end, hey, what happened? I thought talk to me. People respond to a manager very differently, the perception of authority than a salesperson. They don't have to be a good closer. I never ask a manager to be a great closer. That's a totally different skill. And sometimes customers don't respond to that well from a manager. But a great rapport builder, helping your salespeople out, touching the customer, building rapport, being an ambassador for the dealership, that is huge in reducing transaction times because people will tell managers things they will not tell a salesperson, especially if they're left alone with them for a couple of minutes.
Right. Wow.
Okay. Next one, stay out of your office. Sell on your feet. I see salespeople meeting a customer in the showroom with a lot. They bring them back to their office. The worst thing I've ever seen, I know some people still train, this is laughable, is to pull out a guest survey. So let me find a little bit about your wants and needs. And 15 minutes later, they're still asking this person questions. Some people have done more research, literally knowing more about the car than the sales rep. So when you hear a customer telling you out there, to my sales men and women that are watching, what do I have to do? Take a pee sample to look at a truck? Know that something's not working. And I've literally heard that in some showrooms. It's like, what is all of this investigating? The trucks are outside. Can I go look at something? You should be able to, investigate on your feet a little bit. Stay out of your office, because in your office you have the computer and they're looking at the payments and the price screens. They leave without driving a car.
Right.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's like, oh, but you must do the qualifying interview. Yeah, here's a cool qualifying question. Hey, did you find what you were looking for online? Done.
Right.
Then, like you said,
pull
pull out your
course?
phone.
That's almost my first question, verbatim. It's so close. Did you take my class?
No, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's just common sense.
Well, I've got friends in real estate. Their common sense question now when a customer walks through an open house, they're in the foyer.
Yeah.
Hey, did you guys have a chance to do the virtual tour yet?
Yeah.
Wow, what that tells you about a customer is transaction readiness, what they actually want to see right now.
Yeah.
Some people just go, you know what? Oh yeah, we've gone through it 10 times. We just want to go downstairs and make sure the basement doesn't smell like mold. And we've already got the bank approval. Here it is right here. Well, absolutely.
I just feel like, I feel like people overthink sales. To me, like, I've never thought about sales as in this like weird dance that you have to get involved in where you're asking all these dumb questions. And like you said, like, what are you going to do? Bring me into this dark room with like the light that hangs over we're having a conversation. I believe that the trick to good business is to be a good person. And like, as a good person, I would never walk up to somebody and be like, hey, so how many kids you got? And, like, I don't know why all of a sudden I was, but do you know what I mean? Like,
I get it. Yeah.
It's just so bizarre to me. But when I think about conversations I have with strangers and how we build rapport and stuff, it's like, oh, hey, what kind of phone do you have? Like, it's just always conversational.
Right. Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Conversational selling versus confrontational selling, where people feel like they're being interrogated. Totally. And again, that will help speed up the sale because conversations flow. People don't suddenly stop and go, where's this going? What's that about? So that's very true.
I close business. I wouldn't say I'm the best salesperson in the world, but I've done well for myself. And I don't feel, looking back on my career up to this point, I don't feel like I've ever sold anything.
Right. Except yourself.
Yeah. True. But I just feel like I made friends and I shared my opinion and they bought into the common sense or the logical nature of it, and they saw how it fit into their life, and away we go. Yep. So I love it.
Approach. So we're about halfway down the list. Next one, please know your product knowledge. There's a big, again, old school of thought about feature advantage benefit selling. I need you to know the product and all the features, advantage, and benefits, but it's got to be relevant to that customer, and you got to be careful you're not data dumping around the car and saying a bunch of stuff that's already going to conflict what they've researched, what another dealer told them, creates questions in their mind. You can create more problems, actually, with the typical 5 to 8 point walk around that most manufacturers are teaching out there to just go around the car and share things. It can conflict with so many things that, customers got off of wrong websites. Canadian customers that are on an American website by mistakes, they don't know that. Incorrect websites. They don't know when they change a trim level. All the other specifications change. So there's so many gray areas there. It requires a lot of questioning now when you show a car, more so than data dumping. So that the walk around have totally changed. We do a 3-point walk around. It's more about questions than answers. But the data dumping is going to slow down your transaction. The moment you conflict or mismatch what they read online, you're slowing yourself down and probably costing yourself some profit or some sales.
Makes sense.
Next one, very much tied into what you just said, is learning how to build rapport with people quickly and not in a cheesy salesperson way. And that has a lot to do with my next 2 points, which is your body language and your ability to read body language. So at the dealership I was at just a couple of weeks ago, selling and managing and stuff, a customer came in. I was on this particular transaction because I wasn't dealing with them firsthand. I was sort of the floor manager, talking to them a little bit, just a few little, hey, how are yous through the process, just being friendly. And then they're sitting outside the office with the sales rep. They sit down to start doing the numbers. And you could see from the person's body language, he bought the car. It was done. So I just sort of slowly stepped out and I leaned forward before she even started to get into it. And I said, tell me, Christian, you bought the truck. You ready to go? And I just put my hand out. He goes, yeah. And I said, congratulations. The body language training, you can't overtrain, because that is the number one communication tool that we're using to project and also gather information. So that's a big part of lowering transactions. How many salespeople talk themselves out of the sale and stretch out the sale because they're overselling, right?
It's funny you say that. Like my wife, this is so funny, and I don't know how this happened. I'm usually the one that watches the cool, the business shows, the Shark Tanks, Dragon's Den. I'm so into that kind of stuff, kind of a geek. My wife, though, recently has been so interested in Shark Tank, and she's sitting there, we're laying in bed watching it, and she's going, hey, how do they come up with the valuations? And just cool stuff like that. Yeah. But last night on this episode she was watching on Netflix, Mark Cuban had to put up his hand to the guy that was pitching and just said, dude, shut up. Yeah. All 5 of us are in on this deal. Shut up before we change our mind. And so I'm with you, man. I mean, and I've even lost deals because I just kept going too much.
It happens.
It happens.
Yeah, we're not paying attention. Could be nervousness, can't read people.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Next part is our sales language. There's a lot of word tracks that stop the sale psychologically for the customer today. Are you buying today? What would it take for me to earn your business? We're going to do a dealer trader locate. I got a whole sheet on this where people today, what they perceive versus what you're trying to gather are 2 different things. So we have to really modernize our language, because language has evolved a lot. Webster's comes out. Webster's now has emojis in the new Webster's dictionary. And, we're using language that people are going where'd that come from? Because I haven't heard nobody talk like that since the 60s in car dealerships. This is my up. Whose up is this in front of the customer? Is this my custy? I'm a custy. It sounds like an STD. That kind of stuff doesn't help. So.
And it's too casual and it's not professional. And I don't know, man. If somebody said custy in front of me, I'd be like, ugh, are you okay? Do you need a doctor's note? Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. All right. Sales language needs to evolve.
Yeah. 3 or 4 more points. All right. Here's a short story if I've got just 30 seconds.
Absolutely.
How I evolved my sales process was really 3 ways. A, selling all the time, always trying to see how I could tweak things and get things better. My relationship with Joe Girard and getting to know him personally and looking at the number 1 salesperson in the world and conversations with him and deciding kind of what's the crucial pieces that seems to have made this guy who he was. And believe it or not, making tomato sauce. So the hallmark of a successful process, and one of the things I've been, certified in amongst everything else here that I'm teaching, a lot of it is formally trained on by professionals a lot smarter than me around the world, as well as my experience selling cars, is you keep taking elements out of your process and looking at what is affecting your result. And as soon as you find out when you take something out that it no longer works, that's a crucial piece. So in tomato sauce, you can take out the onions and the garlic and the parsley and the olive oil, and basically give you my recipe there, but I can't take out the tomatoes.
Right.
So where I'm going there is there's a lot of ancillary extra information that is involved in training and training salespeople. The process is too long. And a lot of residual stuff left over from 5, 10, 50 years ago. Take it out until you notice that you've got something that no longer works. And when I did that, the simpler sales process, all I'm saying, whatever anybody else wants to develop out there themselves, you're all smart people, or if you want to use mine, I've got a 4-step sales process. Anybody can learn 4 steps. A lot of them are still 10, 15, 20 steps. It just doesn't fit with people's low attention spans, all the transaction readiness type of research they've done, and it conflicts everything we've been talking about. So simple process. Just keep taking stuff out, and then just keep in there what is crucial, and try to follow the psychology of what we're talking about here. Next one is having a separate sales process versus a transaction process. So if you go into an Apple store, an actual Apple store, one of the first questions an Apple rep will ask you, typically they're supposed to, is, and I've gone to an Apple store, actually in Vancouver, where you're from, and one in Hamburg, Germany, a couple summers ago, they're supposed to ask you what Apple product you have. And the reason is, some people, like my children, would kind of laugh and list everything from the Nano, Max, Apple TV. That's all they know.
Right.
They're now trained, and Apple's done fairly well as a company. They're trained to not have a sales process for somebody that's sold. So they basically move right into a transaction process. So why are you here? And then they try to transact smoothly. They'll swipe you on their phone, sign the screen. Do you want a receipt here? Do you want it emailed? Bags under the counter. And then they actually tell you the changes on the phone after they get your money. So I know we don't sell phones, but you need a system. We have 8 questions basically, but you need a system to find out if the customer's sold. And if they're sold, we want to just verify some of their research, and then get into the transaction part. And then you need a separate closing process, which is, again, how involved is this going to be? Some people are ready to buy a car in 5 minutes. They've done the right research. They don't want to go back and forth for 2 hours. Other people, it's going to be a completely different transaction. So we got to separate smart sales processes from transaction processes. So 2 very clearly different things. And my last one, something that's never changed in the business, is some people will purchase a vehicle without taking it for a test drive for lots of reasons, but nobody's ever purchased a vehicle without seeing how much it is. We have to get into what I call fearless, smart proposals with everybody. Ideally after a test drive, because we don't really want to get into a lot of proposals before the drive. We do want to make sure it's the right car and take that time with the customer, 5 or 10 minutes, whatever it is going to be driving a vehicle. But everybody that comes in the dealership, should go for a drive somehow, some way, and get to that test drive within 10 minutes. If you're not out on a test drive within 10 minutes, something's wrong with your process, if that's not your average. Some people it's going to be an hour. Some people it's going to be less than that. But 10 to 15 minutes, you need to be out on a drive with your client. And then when you get back, everybody that goes for a drive, we need to put numbers in front of them. We need to share figures on whatever information they're giving us or we give them, because nobody's going to buy a car without seeing how much it is. And they're going to get a price somewhere else. So stop looking for all the perfect conditions out there and start putting numbers in front of your customers that have gone for test drives. But let's get them into test drives. And those 2 things sound simple here. That's a bit of an art, but it's easy to learn. Very easy to learn.
I love it because it's, everything we've talked about, I feel like is common sense. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that because I think I'm smarter than anybody, but I think it's just what comes from putting yourself in the customer's shoes and just paying attention to what's happening out there. We talked about it earlier in the show. Instead of being so worried about where you think Amazon or Elon Musk is going to take car sales, focus in on putting yourself in the customer's shoes today. What are some of the expectations they have? What are they looking for? I feel like everything in our industry, this is a blanket general statement, but in context, I feel like everything in our industry is always so me focused. How do I make this the best deal for my dealership? How do I make the most front end and back? How do I sell more cars? How do I this? How do I that? And really the answer that's been sitting on the table in front of everybody, and like you said, I think because of Scotoma, is the fact that, but your customers have expectations and you're not, just do, come up with a process that is more along the lines of what they're wanting.
Right.
And you will get what you want, but everybody's just so me focused these days.
Absolutely.
If they could just take the blinders off.
And just on that, We're not really in this. We're not in the sales industry. We're in the customer service business.
Right.
And if they just approach it from that level, you'll end up with more sales, because you don't have to be paid for everything that you do. And it's not all about transacting and taking, but it's all about customer service. The point of this talk, I think, with reducing transaction times, is because so many more people now shop a lot more virtually and less physically. We have to know, most people, when they come in, there's an expectation that it's going to match other great experiences they've had in other businesses, and that you need to provide great customer service. And if those things happen, and you're constantly trying to get better and paying attention, we're going to continue for another 100 years in this business being highly successful. I'm confident of that, but it's at the end of the day, we're in the customer service business.
I love it. Thanks so much. I mean, so much, a wealth of information here. How can those listening get in touch with you to learn more about how to dramatically decrease transaction times?
Okay. Well, thank you. Go to my website, which is Duane Marino, DuaneMarino.com. We've got online training. You can sign up right there on your smartphone, watch the videos on your phone. Go on Amazon, get one of my 3 books, Unstoppable Selling, Unstoppable Money, or Unstoppable Attitude. Have us come into your dealership or do a keynote for your group, come to your region, or come to my academy in Toronto. We do regular courses in Toronto. You'll see on my website. We have a lot of ways to serve you and make you all better. And I love the business. I'm still excited by it. Hopefully get a chance, Michael, one day to physically meet you and maybe meet some of our listeners that are watching the show. So I really, really thank you, and thank everybody for listening. Thanks for having me on.